Hey everyone, Simon here. Both Devang and I are tied up a little this week, but we wanted to continue on the theme of Novak Djokovic dominance and a trip back to the Australian Open final of 2012. This one is from our vote, and it's one that holds a special place for Dev and I, as it's from the Sport Chronicle, the precursor to Open Era. It's crazy to think that episode came out over 4 years ago. I had just turned 30 when it came out. Oh, how the times have changed. You know what hasn't changed though? Novak Djokovic winning Grand Slams. Off the back of the Serbs' triumph in Australia, we revisit the longest final in Australian Open history in 2012. Over a decade has passed since that match, but it still stands the test of time for one of the greatest performances from two competitors. I guess all I have to say in closing is, enjoy this one, and can someone please get these two a chair, for Christ's sake?
This is the Sport Chronicle. I'm Simon Bushell.
And I'm Devang Desai. This was one for the ages, the longest men's final in tennis history at a Grand Slam level. Two of the ultimate grinders going at it head to head. But make no mistake, this was a final of immense quality, one which left both competitors unable to stand at its conclusion.
This historic Australian Open Championship, the 100th champion about to be decided, is becoming a habit that we see these men in Grand Slam finals. Not a bad habit to get into.
Would you welcome to Relive the second seed from Spain, Rafael Nadal.
The defending champion, ready to do battle in 2012.
The seed is Novak Djokovic.
Both at the top of their game, the two best players in the world.
Djokovic is just there, beautifully set. Nadal can't believe it.
The fact that we played almost 6 hours is incredible.
There's been a perceptible change in the momentum of this match all of a sudden. It is turning into a match of lost opportunities.
Dedicate our life to this sport, to come to the situation where we play 6-hour match for Grand Slam title.
It's going to be crazy when they write the story of the great tennis matches ever played. This one has got to be right up the front of the book.
This was really one of those matches that you remember where you were and you remember just at the end being thankful for being a fan of the sport because of the two guys that competed so damn hard.
Yeah, and Djokovic is the defending champion here. And I think also, which is very important to note, is that Djokovic and Nadal played each other in 6 finals in the year previously, and Djokovic won all 6. So this was really a mental battle more than, well, it's also an incredible physical battle because Djokovic will make you run and move and put you in all sorts of places. But Nadal, I think for the first time in his career, really didn't feel like the king of the world, right? He had that kind of up-and-coming label, which, I mean, since he was... How long did it take him to shed that? He was 16 when he...
when he burst on the scene.
Yeah, exactly. Shockingly enough, when you turn 16, you're already in the top 10 or whatever the hell it is.
It's true, he looks different. Like when you look back at the highlights of this tournament and this final, he doesn't have that imposing physicality, I feel like, in this tournament and this final. And even when his road here wasn't completely smooth sailing. I mean, he lost the first set to Thomas Berdych in the quarterfinal. He loses the first set to Roger Federer in the semifinal, which he's done quite often, only to come back, which he did against Roger, and then to play Novak. But it's interesting because Nadal has enjoyed that kind of mental edge against Roger, and that was the biggest thing about the rivalry. And now it was turned on its head, where you had a guy in Djokovic who enjoyed that against Rafa, and it was the shoe was on the other foot kind of thing. And it just physically, it was hard for you to watch Rafa in this final, because even though he was in the match, and of course he battled till the very end, he just looked so weary. And you had this Djokovic character who looked like he was ready to take the tennis world by storm, and he really was. And then he would go on to have some of the best years ever seen, men or women, on the tour.
It's funny how the mental battle between those three has shifted so tectonically, throughout the years, is because you have that matchup where Federer really is the king and he rules over these two. Then Nadal catches up to him, and that rivalry kind of flips on its head, and it's kind of been back and forth. And then you would say the reverse is true, right? Novak came on, Federer owned him, and then since that point, there's been this, I don't know I think Djokovic is very much in Federer's head in the reverse way. So the last few years, it's just been straight domination. So it's kind of just a bizarre flipping of the mindsets of these players.
Very few people, and this final doesn't involve Roger Federer, though we're talking about him quite a bit as we do, but very few people can get into Roger's head on a hard court. And I think Novak is fully there and planted himself. Imagine they had the shot clock for this final. Both guys would have definitely have lost several points.
Yeah, they also may have died on court. If they
But that's not that. I mean, both guys are well known for taking their sweet time in between points, but the length of these rallies is insane. It is an absolutely insane final that usually when you have these horribly long matches, the quality dips. And I'd argue that the quality only increased as this match went on, and that's extremely rare.
I would agree. And in the world of tennis, the more things change, the more things stay the same, especially on the men's side. If you look at who are in the quarterfinals
It's nuts.
It's basically the same. The only person who is gone is David Ferrer, and it's difficult to believe in 2012 he was the fifth seed here.
Yeah.
It gets slightly different on the women's side of it. If you see who the champion is, it's Victoria Azarenka.
Yeah.
So how much this has changed on that side of the draw. You look at the quarterfinalists, semifinalists, the finalists, and the women's side, it's completely changed. It's a complete hodgepodge of people that you just completely forgot existed on that side of the draw.
I think, and this is why I think men's tennis has been so lucky the last I'd say over a decade. When you have so many familiar faces, there's a real familiarity if you're a fan, and if you're a pseudo fan who only tunes in at the big tournaments. Like, these guys, they're always there, they're always in the conversation, and it makes for easy viewing to pick up the storylines and figure out what's going on. Whereas I think you had to be a little more in the know on the women's side to know who these people are and really appreciate what their stories, where they're coming from. I think Azarenka and Andy Murray, I think, have interesting parallels of what they're trying to do, coming back from different things, obviously different situations, but two people who were so damn good, so powerful in the game, and yet are now having to claw their way back in small steps. So I hope to see them both back. The way this tournament worked out and the way Novak seemed to own Australia, you had to consider him the favorite, especially considering what happened in 2011 going into the final. And that being said, I think Nadal opens this match about as perfect as you can against a grinder like Djokovic.
For much of the set, he looked the man more likely, and so it proves. Rafael Nadal takes the first step in the final in 2012 after 1 hour and 20 minutes. 7 games to 5 is the Spaniard on his way.
He takes the first set 7-5 after I love the way this is written here, a long attritional battle.
It describes the entire match.
It really does, yeah. And you gotta think there must be some tiredness in both of these guys' legs. More specifically in Djokovic's legs on that long semi-final against Andy Murray, which is also 4 hours on court in the sweltering heat. And a point on just the surface, I think looking back at this, I think this is a much slower court before they decided to actually increase the speed of the Australian Open, which helped a great deal. I don't think you'd see this kind of final played again between these two. I think the points would be much shorter. This court is slow.
It was really tough, and I think it showed in the scorelines leading up. Like Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic, that match, attritional rallies personified in that one as well.
It was. I think the shot making that they had, and certainly in terms of the winners they hit, were more from being able to move the player around the court and open the space, as opposed to just hitting the doors off someone, right? Just hitting straight through them with power. And I think that is a testament to who you see in the semifinals and in the quarterfinal stages as well. It's very unlikely that you would see David Ferrer make a quarterfinal at a Grand Slam level on a hard court if you didn't have a slowish surface. I think you're correct, but it's a larger narrative in the tennis world of what the surface actually does, especially on a hard court and especially at Grand Slam level. I think this made for a really good final. I think it also made for a final that really we had to question whether or not this is actually good for both of these players to go through, given the fact they couldn't stand at the end of it.
Call it the chair final, right?
Yeah.
Please get me a chair. What are you doing? I think it was dangerous to have them stand after that. Imagine
the port have to listen to the Kia guy go on for 15 minutes.
The president of Kia waxing poetically about the qualities of the latest sedan that's being trotted out.
We get it. It's a good SUV.
I mean, hey, it'll last. They'll get at least 200,000 miles off this. I understand.
Let's go to the second set. Also, I just a note at the end of the first set, Nadal is all kinds of fired up at the end of that first set. He's going bananas.
Crowd very pro Nadal at this point as well. I think the crowd is pro Nadal, but you have the faction, the Nole faction, the Serbia factor, slowly creeping in as you get farther in the match, and they get loud as hell.
Yeah, they make themselves heard, don't they? Even though they're small in amount of people, they're very, very loud. The second set is very, very close, and I think this is a really decisive set for this match. Nadal has an opportunity. He has the break, but Djokovic manages to break back and closes this one out 6-4.
Double faults have decided a couple of big points. Djokovic levels up the match. He was the favourite before it started. He's probably a slight favourite again. We're a set apiece in the final after 2 hours and 27 minutes.
This was the killer, right? If Nadal takes this one, you probably think he can go on and win it. But Djokovic gets stronger and stronger, and at the end of it, he gives that stare to his camp as he finishes at set
The
point.
maniacal stare.
Yeah, the kind of, oh God, is this guy a serial killer? I'm not sure, but he gives the very like long and drawn out stare.
And then
to
the
camp.
opposite, I think emotionally, this was more than a set loss to Rafa. This was a devastating blow. Because I think if he's up 2 sets to love at this point, you can see him finding enough in the reservoir to get through this and win this.
And it's the mental battle as well, right? We talk about it, losing 6 finals on the trot coming into this one. You have to try it, and especially over 5 sets, you know that this guy is not going away.
This, again, very much reminded me of the finals that Nadal and Federer would have, in which Roger would take the first set, look pretty good in the second set as well, have his looks, have his opportunities, and yet is unable to consolidate the first set, lose the second set, and then we get into dicey territory where mentally the belief just simply isn't there. And then we see the same kind of thing play out with a guy like Djokovic, who fully believes he can beat Rafa, and even more so now that Nadal's will is kind of being tested here.
Yeah, you see a reservation for both of these players to step forward unless they know they can really rip winners. Just the
Nothing happened at the net here either.
No,
this is a netless game.
They are standing a very, very long way behind the baseline and just running and picking up everything and slogging. Like, I don't know what the average rally length in this match was, but it has to be closer to 8, 9.
Towards the end, we were getting at an average of around 12 to 18 shot rallies, which I think is insane. But a testament to these guys. And then, I mean, so you have that let off. You have Rafa kind of capitulate at the end of the second set. The third set, you're wondering now, all right, this might be a 2-1 situation where it could be over very quickly.
That's the way it's looking at the moment. The roar goes up from Djokovic and his supporters, and seemingly he's on his way. 2 sets to 1 after 3 hours and 11 minutes.
I don't think Nadal played that badly. I just thought Djokovic elevated his level into this third set so high that not anyone in the world probably could have competed with him.
But this is Novak. This is Novak's mini era. I feel like this is this guy. I think this would be his 5th Grand Slam title. From this point onward, I think, is when you kind of see it's not me against the world kind of idea. It's I am the best player in the world, and I don't think there's much of a debate about it.
Yeah, I remember some discussion about this era, and it was, I can't remember who was talking about it, but it was almost this equivalent if he knew he was the alpha in the locker room, like, you know, to use a
brotastic
phrase, yeah. But I mean, in the sense that he knew he was the guy, right, walking around the locker room, and he took that to heart, potentially in some negative ways as well, just in the way that people talk about him and some of the stories that came out about him. But he definitely knew he was the guy, and he entered every single tournament with the belief that he was better than everyone else in the world.
Just think about all the little things. Think about you have Roger and Fed, Nike guys. You have Novak, a Sergio Tacchini guy at this point, like a Italian fashion designer brand, like, and Uniqlo, and the fact that if he did have a chip on his shoulder for not necessarily being loved, I can understand why. Because I don't think the narrative about him, especially with those retirements due to heat and other issues in the early part of his career, like he was not a beloved figure by any means. It was his camp that loved him, his countrymen that loved him, and that was about it. And especially when he went against these guys, you had people openly rooting against him. And he used that so well. But then it became something of absorbing the fact that people did begin to like him because he was a likable guy. He smiles a lot. He's expressive. He jokes. There's a lot of things to like about Novak Djokovic on the court.
In that set, he dropped only 2 points on serve and finishes it with a crushing forehand in the 8th game. This is probably one of the shots of the match, using the entirety of that massive swing weight on that racket to stretch out wide and smash it into the open court. This was the shot that really helped him as well in this one. Nadal is not susceptible to many things, but if you can get him moving and get him on angles, that's the one thing that he really struggles with, moving forward and backwards. And when I say it's really hard to do it, it's basically no one can. It's
It's
like one person in the world can do it, which Djokovic did consistently in this match.
Rafa's slice back then was not nearly as good as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's really improved on that as his career got. And I guess he had to, because he's no longer the freshest guy. I mean, he's an ultimate warrior, but he's older now. But back then, his slice was not nearly good enough, I think, to continuously use it. And when he did use it, warning sign, like it's a danger, like you are in trouble. And Novak capitalized on it time and time again in this match.
And that slice was probably, it was the epitome of the fact that Djokovic can stand up to his spin and to his power like no one else on the tour. Mm-hmm. Like Djokovic's best shot is his backhand down the line. And that is Nadal's strength. That is the one strength that he has above pretty much everyone else on the tour, the ability to spin that forehand into your backhand side. And if you're playing into someone's strength, then you're in a lot of trouble, because this guy that you're playing has everything and more to take away your best weapon.
Except if you're Novak somehow.
Yeah, apparently so.
I mean, a bit of a side. I think Novak Djokovic is the best returner of all time. I think I can say that confidently now.
It's a very close tie between him and Agassi.
I know you're an Andre guy. I know it's a tough argument.
Djokovic is an incredible returner, and I suspect he probably is the best returner of all time.
I don't think there's anyone that has been as flexible and able to put so much on the ball from seemingly losing positions.
And he always dumps the ball in a position where it's difficult to make the first shot. Like, it always ends up at your feet or in the backhand corner, no matter where you put the return. It's a nightmare. I can only imagine how horrible that is to play against. Yeah. You give your best serve and it lands back at your feet. Like, what are you supposed to do? You can't play an aggressive shot off the first ball.
That's why I love watching him play the big servers on tour, because they walk into this match knowing that their only weapon is basically useless in this.
This fourth set, and I think this is very similar to actually some of the things that we've watched before, some of the matches that we've watched before, is the fourth set is where it kind of have all the amalgamation of everything that happens. Nadal wins the fourth set tiebreak and falls to his knees in celebration, but not before we have a set of unbelievable quality. There's breaks back and forth, and even the tiebreak itself is astonishing in terms of the ups and downs of it.
Nadal collapses to his knees and then bounces straight back up, because he knows the job is still there to be done. It'll probably be the longest match in Australian Open history by the time it's over. This is magnificent. It is 2 sets apiece in the final.
Weird. At the time, I thought this was the pinnacle of the match. I thought we were not going to get better than this in terms of the back and forth. And I think at this point as well, this is extremely late at night. This is like 4 a.m. Eastern time when I was watching at a buddy's condo. I was thinking I was the only one awake as well after a night out. We came back and I'm like, I'm going to put on the match. It must be like
a nice short match.
Yeah. But it was actually sunrise by the time this ended. Just a testament to how long it was. But quality was insane. I think this is also... No, Rafa is just... I mean, I'm on the record. I'm not a huge Rafa fan. I have a lot of respect for him, but my level of respect for him just grew exponentially watching him in this set, and seemingly on the brink. I mean, he's down 5-3. He's seemingly on the ropes. Looks like it's over, and yet he comes back, and the shot making is one thing, but also I think I get a little annoyed when I see Rafa kind of like fist pumping and doing like the Rafa stuff, but genuinely feels like he needs to do it, not to convince the crowd or his box, to himself. And I think I've said this before, but if you can motivate yourself like that and be able to draw something where there doesn't seem to be anything left, energy-wise or confidence-wise, it's remarkable. And I think that's what makes him such an amazing champion. And you saw that repeatedly in this set. He just refused. He refused to let it end then.
Just think about the mental strength that it takes to do this. You've lost 6 finals on the trot to someone like this, and you're 5-3 down. You are very much on the precipice. You are looking over the edge. If it just takes a touch to push you over the cliff, and he somehow digs deep enough to come back and win the next 4 games and the set. I made fun of him for falling to his knees at the end of the set in celebration. It's just, very rarely that it happens. But I understand it. Like, the guy put his heart and soul into that set.
And you see Novak's reaction as well, where it's like, well, this was not going to be easy, was it? Like,
well, I guess we're going to 5 then.
He's sort of kind of as like a mirror of the audience, where it's like, yeah, I'm not quite surprised, because this deserved to end the way it did, and not in that 4th set. All these guys, all the top 3, the big 3, and as much as I love Andy Murray, I think it's fair to say that we will talk about this generation is the big three, and then you had Stan and Juan Martin and Andy as those next crew of guys. These three guys, in different ways, found something out of nothing so often that it's really fun to look back at some of these incredible matches that they had and them being impossible to break down mentally. And then when they're playing the other guy, or like when they're playing a guy on the other side of the court who has that same ability, which makes it even more impressive. And it happens so many times.
Nadal has a break for 4-2 in the fifth set, and you think that finally this is the moment, the straw that breaks the camel's back. He's going to push on and win the fifth set and finally get the monkey off the back after 6 in a row. Doesn't happen that way. Djokovic hits back immediately for 4-all, and then we hold serve all the way up until that decisive game for 7-5, which Djokovic wins.
When they write the story of the great tennis matches ever played, this one has got to be right up the front of the book. 5 hours and 53 minutes. Novak Djokovic is the champion in Melbourne for the third time. That was simply extraordinary.
It's the longest final in the history of the Australian Open. An incredible end, an incredible final set to justify really one of the greatest matches of all time.
Rafa's got to have some horrible memories of Australia. I mean, he really saw the same thing play out in 2017 against Roger, where he had that break in the fifth set. Seemed like he was going to do it. It was going to be fine. And no, and he ran into an impossible force that came up against him. This is amazing, just an amazing final. I mean, Nole's reaction, looking up at the sky cam with that huge expression and tearing his shirt off, and then the trophy celebration where both men are basically almost collapsed and leaning on each other basically to stand up. It's just one of those seminal moments and those lasting memories where it's like, oh man, we're lucky. We're so lucky to have this era come to be.
I think if I look back, that's the one defining memory I will have for both of these players is them asking for the chair after just beating the living Jesus out of each other for 5 hours on court. A couple of stats out of this one. This is Nadal's third consecutive Grand Slam final loss to Djokovic, and the only player in the modern era to lose 3 Grand Slams in a row to the same player. Goodness me, that is a record you do not want to have. That is deeply sad in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I guess the second point on it was, as Nadal has said himself, is quoted as saying that this is the worst loss of his career. This is the worst loss that he will look back over his career and just think that he cannot imagine how he lost this match. It's kind of devastating, actually, to hear someone like that talk about it in that way.
I feel like he changed his persona a bit after this match as well. Like he was still wearing like the kind of long shorts and like the sleeves, and he looked young. He looked like young Rafa still, and I think he kind of
Had hair.
yeah, right. He shedded that shell or that and became like a new guy after this, and owned the muscular, impossibly chiseled physique guy that would beat you off the court physically more than ever. And he worked on it, because I think he lost a lot in this match towards the end. Like, he just didn't have it, and he worked his tail off to get back to the level he thought he needed to get to. And of course, he's shown it by how many titles he's won since.
Yeah, spoiler warning, he comes back and he's fine.
Super fun.
He does okay after this.
I mean, Novak goes on an incredible run here. Like, this is
the start of superhuman. Yeah,
this is like Fed in the mid-aughts. This is Rafa in the later aughts to like the turn of this decade. And I would argue it's up there, if not more impressive, for what Novak was able to do in these couple of years, because this is like the prime years of this era as well. So
it takes a lot to beat the record where Federer lost 4 times in a year, or whatever it was, 3 times a year. And Djokovic, I think, did it. I think he did it. Is it 83 match wins? 82 match wins he holds the record for, and 3 losses. It's astonishing. What these 3 have been able to do is utterly astonishing in terms of just their consistency and the mental strength and the physical strength. That's the thing that doesn't get talked about enough, is how fit and energetic these all 3 are. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen like in the sense of they don't pull out of matches now. That's a different story in its entirety.
Different years back.
Different years back, but different now. 3 quotes from Sampras, Agassi, and Becker all saying it's the greatest match they've ever seen. Mats Wilander, one of those players, is not like the other, by the way.
Had to speak of his name. Mats Wilander. God damn. I go to Borg here. It showed what it takes to beat this top group of players, and it does. And this is why it makes it even more impressive when you see the likes of Stan and Andy and Juan Martin able to get these. I think Juan Martin's beat the number one player in the world more than anyone else ever.
So it's double digits now.
10 right?
times, yeah.
It's incredible what those guys are able to do because of how impressive these guys are. Like, these people have made impossibly memorable careers based on the fact that they're going against Herculean giants of the sport that we'll never see the likes of again.
I feel very strongly in this point on the men's side that Juan Martín del Potro will be the greatest player to never reach number one in the world. He's so talented, and he's been just so blighted by injuries.
Yeah.
I just think in a different world where he doesn't get that injury, he's competing at the top end of the sport, and he's never going to be amongst these three, but I could see him winning multiple Grand Slams.
And on his day, do never discount him against the top at all.
Devang, this is our first one with me being unemployed.
Hey, I was like, it's the fall of Bush. No, but in a good way. The fall of Bushel.
Yeah, like the autumn
of Bushel.
Yeah.
The autumn of Bushel.
Maybe the autumn of my career potentially as well.
I was trying to spin this, man.
I'm turning 30 soon. It's all downhill from it.
Hey, as someone who turned 30, it's not over yet.
We still have time.
Yeah, I just gotta do all the things I have to stop all the things that I don't drink anymore. It's great.
I don't exercise anymore. It's great. Alrighty, thanks everyone. We'll talk to you soon.